What's up YouTube, Dale here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you my first place Labrnyth profile. Now this had some very nice added spice, which really did catch a lot of players off guard, which ultimately helped me push it over the line and did do incredibly well. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. So we're going to start by diving headfirst into the profile and explain what we've got and why we've got it. Now the matchups were Unchained, Branded, one Kashtira, keeping in mind this is pre-ban list, so they were giving it one last hurrah, and then also ended up facing Sword Soul, which is very, very interesting. That was probably one of the tougher matches, and Trap Tricks as well. That was pretty difficult. So we start off with 2 Lady Labrnyth of the Silver Castle and 1 Lovely Lady. All pretty straightforward and simple on these ones. You know what they do, they get the job done, they are your boss monsters and everything you need to. But I was playing an extra boss monster from the extra deck, which really did come in clutch. We are then playing triple Ariana, the Labrnyth Servant, all pretty straightforward on that. This is your main normal summon for the Labrnyth deck. We are playing another normal summon in the deck that can help you give a couple of options, but ideally you want to just be setting the trap card off of your Lady Labrnyth to kind of give you that additional play. We are playing the furniture package, so we are getting with triple Stovey, triple Chandelier, and then I was going with 1 Cuckoo Clock just because it was a last minute addition change to the deck that I cut this down to 1. I definitely want to be bumping this up to at least 2. I just need to find the card to change. And mainly the reason that this was cut down to 1 was because of this engine here, and that is the Dinomorphia engine. Now, I know a lot of you are going to be like, what the heck is this doing in here? Well, the theory behind this was that I would set Dinomorphia Frenzy off of the back of Lady Labrnyth, activate the Frenzy, send a Pharesia from the deck, send 1 monster from the extra deck, and then bring out a Rexstrom. The idea for that was, what's better than a skill drain? A one-sided skill drain. Now, of course, skill drain I know isn't that big of an issue for this particular deck, so it wasn't exactly something I was massively worried about. I just kind of thought, hey, you know what? I've recently been able to kind of like had a newfound enjoyment of the Dinomorphia package, and then I built Labrnyth, and I was like, all right, let's see if we can spice it up. So currently the deck is at 41 cards. It's definitely an engine that would definitely be taken out because at the moment I was missing 1 big Welcome Labrnyth. So this would be replacing, take this out, put it down to a 38 card deck, and then you would go for 1 Cuckoo Clock and 1 big Welcome Labrnyth. That being said, this engine put in so much work because so many people were not expecting it. The best thing about this is when I was moving into game 3 or I thought the game would be a little bit grindy, I either wouldn't use this engine or I'd side it out. But the idea that this was able to get me into a Rexstrom was incredibly powerful. Yes, the Rexstrom would be at 4k, but as soon as my opponents, or like my life points would be at 4k, as soon as my opponent put a monster on the board, I would happily put myself down to 2k, and then that made it a little bit more difficult. If I was feeling very risky, of course, I could go through Frenzy, and Frenzy goes into Kentagina, and then Kentagina would use her effect to use the Frenzy to give me into a Rexstrom, and that's how I got my life points to 1,000. And it really did cause my opponent a lot of issues, because not only was I able to loop resource with my Lady of the Silver Castle, but I was also able to rip away their resource with Lovely Lady as well. So it really did give me another kind of edge that they just weren't expecting and then didn't know what to deal with because they were utilising hand traps. If they were going to be utilising Ash Blossom, they would hit Frenzy when they saw it, but then I'd be like, okay, cool, big welcome. Now, the one issue is there is a massive clash between the Dinomorphia package and Welcome Labrnyth, but that was something that I really needed to kind of focus on and make sure that I didn't lock myself, or if I did, I had these in the fallback so that when the lock of Welcome Labrnyth fell off, I was able to utilise this, which is why I also, as a quick advanced preview, was playing 2 Super Poly. So the way I kind of saw it was Super Poly was a very good option to help me break a board on a crackback or just break a board and then build my board as I want to. But it was also just one of them ones that my local environment was kind of, again, walking into. A lot of people were playing the Bestials as it was like a final hurrah or one of the penultimate hurrahs for that. Same with Kashtiras. And ultimately I wanted a board breaking card. I felt that Dark Ruler and Droplets weren't good enough because if I didn't have enough kind of presence to pick that board apart, I was going to struggle. Whereas if I was still able to set my back row and one of them was a Super Poly and pass my turn, I could then hit them with a Super Poly at the right time and then follow up with the big Welcomes and the Welcome Labrnyths and everything else. For the hand traps, of course, pretty standard. Triple Ash Blossom, triple Imperm. Drolls is obviously in the side for this one. My local environment just doesn't need Droll to be mained, but it can very easily be mained if you want it to. In that place, you'd probably play the Drolls over the Ashes, but ultimately I feel that Ash was just a little bit more specific, and the reason for that is I was expecting more Labrynths, I was expecting more Runics because of the tin reprints, but it was neither a hindrance or a miss, to be completely honest. Onto the normal spells, I was playing triple Pot of Prosperity and the one Labrynth. Again, entirely up to you. You could play Extrav, but the reason I built this deck the way I did was I wanted to have such a range from my extra deck that I could afford to play the Dinomorphias. I could afford to play fewer targets for punishment. I didn't need to be playing 3 Chaos Angel because I only own one and I wasn't going to go out of my way to pick up 2 more. And it also meant that I could play a big range of Super Poly targets as well. Then I only owned 2 big Welcome Labrynth. I'm waiting for the third one to come from Chris. So once that turns up, then I'll shift the deck around a little bit more. But 2 big Welcome, incredibly powerful. There's a reason this has now gone up in price. And then 2 Welcome Labrynth. Could have very easily, if I wanted to, made it 1, just because of the way this deck is built. Because I do play the Frenzy, the way you've got to look at it is your Frenzy is technically another copy of Labrynth, because you don't really want both of them on the board unless you're going to go Frenzy and then Welcome Labrynth. So it does mean... I mean, it's kind of cool because you can go Frenzy, they'll ash it, and then you go, okay, cool, Welcome Labrynth, you're good to rock and roll. But you ideally want them to be stopping your Welcome Labrynth. Now, the best thing about that is if they stop the Welcome Labrynth, you're kind of in a good position because if you don't special summon it, you're not really locked out. But that kind of does give you that ability to have a crackback in the form of Super Poly, and it also gives you that crackback of the Frenzy as well. And then the final cards is just one-off power cards, so the Punishment, Cannon, D-Barrier, and Eradicator. All pretty straightforward and simple. You go first, you know what you're up against. Eradicator, call it, done, game over. Again, same with D-Barrier. Cannon, again, is also a really kind of cool one to just kind of clear a board off if you need to. And then Punishment, again, is just one of them ones where it does clash with Frenzy and it does clash with Super Poly. So you need to make sure that you've used those cards first and then you don't care about the Punishment. But the deck just has a little bit of flexibility. Like at the end of the day, like I said, the reason I put in the Dinomorphia package is I had a newfound kind of enjoyment from playing that deck, like the pure deck. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to see if I can fit this in a workable stance of Labrynths because I was just going to have a bit of casual fun. And it worked out incredibly well. Just like people were not expecting Rexstrom, they were not expecting this engine. And once Rexstrom was hitting the board, they were like, ah, okay. Now, obviously, I know skill drain costs a lot less and it doesn't cause as big of an issue. But as soon as your opponent gets a boss monster or can control the board state in that strength, it gets a little bit tricky. Whereas with Rexstrom, you're always making sure that your opponent's monsters are going to be weaker than yours. And it does then give you that ability as a crackback to push further forward for your stuff as well. Now, obviously, you need to keep in mind that if you open up 2 for easy, the card's dead. But that's one of the ones where you just don't search it. And if you burn through your extra deck, make sure when you activate in Prosperity, you don't banish any of your Dinomorphia monsters, because then you will put yourself in a bit of an issue. But like I said, very easy 3-card side-out engine, good to rock and roll, do whatever you want to. So moving on to the extra deck, we'll talk about our punishment targets, starting off with Natis, obviously secondary pop, and then of course our Tri-Brigade Arms. Now, the idea behind the Tri-Brigade Arms is it's a 3,500 target that then allows you to send a Garura for a draw, because you're not really going to want to be sending Garura off of your punishment because it means your opponent has a 1,500 attack monster. It's not really worth it. So you might as well send a 3,500 and then get a nice draw as well. Speaking of Garura, this does filter quite nicely into our Super Poly targets. So we are playing the 1 Mud Dragon of the Swamp, Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, Triple-Headed Predaplant, and of course Predaplant Dracus Depelia. All pretty straightforward and simple on that one. Then for the Dinomorphia engine that I know you guys have been waiting for, we've got the 1 Kentagina, the 1 Stealth Bergia, and 2 Rexstroms. Now, if you wanted to minimize this engine because you wanted to play some other cards, maybe some more Super Poly targets, or you wanted to play the DDD package, then you can cut this down to a minimum of 2, because what you've got to remember is Frenzy sends from the extra deck. The reason we've got it at 4 is because you're going to use Frenzy twice, once of its own and then 1 from Kentagina. So the idea is if you need to get your life points to 1,000 life points, then you'll need to go Frenzy into Kentagina, Kentagina's effect to then get into a Rexstrom. So you'll need to send 2 from your extra deck and 2 from your main deck, being both of your Pharesias. If you are not going to do that and you just want to go straight for a Rexstrom, which will get your life points to 2,000 after you've used Rexstrom's effect, then all you need to do is send 1. So you've got the ability to flex around with this. However, going from Kentagina into Rexstrom was incredibly powerful today, because straight away Rexstrom is a 3k base, Kentagina will become a 3k base, and then you add a lady on top of that. That is a one-sided skill drain with great consistency to get into an OTK push. Now, as I mentioned as I went through the main profile, if you are worried about getting into time, that's where you'll change it up and you can take out the Dinomorphia engine. You could side out the stuff in the extra deck, but they just become very easy fodder for the Pot of Prosperity. Then, of course, we've got the 1 Chaos Angel. If I wanted to, you can bump up to 3 Chaos Angels, but then you're looking at probably paying extra or just relying on this a lot more. I honestly didn't need to, and the best thing about that as well is Kentigina is a 6. So if you get an Ariana to the board, and you're like, oh, okay, I just want to upgrade and go into a Chaos Angel, you can actually just synchro off an Ariana and a Kentigina and go straight into a Chaos Angel. And then what you're doing is you're upgrading your Kentigina from 3k to 3500, or if your life points aren't low enough, you're still upgrading Kentigina into a 3k 3500 boss monster with non-target banish, target banish, and then you'll have a Rextrum that can't be destroyed by card effect, can't be destroyed by battle, which is really kind of cool. And then for the final Link monsters, of course, we've got the 2 Muckcracker from the Underworld, just generic Fiend protection, and then the 1 Unchanged Soul Lord Yama. Now, the idea of Yama is for the pure fact that you've got Fiends plenty in the Labyrinth kind of deck. So the idea is that once one of your cards is destroyed, or in general, just a card, maybe it's just a card you control. Yeah, so a card you control is destroyed by battle or card effect. While it's in the graveyard, you get to banish it to special summon a Fiend monster from your hand or graveyard. Now, obviously, you can make this so much more consistent because at the moment, when you're summoning it, you've not really got anything to Link climb higher up into apart from just using it to go across into a Muckcracker. But the idea is you've got a 2k Link monster on the board, and then if this gets to the graveyard and they destroy any of your cards, you get to banish it and then bring back a lady or bring back any of your Fiend monsters, basically. It's not a necessity, but that's what's so good about this extra deck is it's very, very flexible. So if you lock yourself into Fiends, you've got options. If you don't lock yourself into Fiends, you've still got options, which is really kind of powerful. And that's obviously the difference with Chaos Angel, is the fact it's a Fiend, you don't care when you lock yourself with Welcome Labyrinth. And that's the one thing that I needed to be incredibly cautious of with this deck, is when I was making my Super Poly plays, when I was going for my Frenzy plays, I had to make sure that I hadn't Fiend locked myself, or if I had Fiend locked myself, that the plays I was about to make were going to be used once that lock ran out. Anyway, I hope this has given you a couple of ideas for your own build. It's very different from what I've seen out there, and I quite liked it. Obviously, I don't think I'll get the same success twice with this deck at the same place with the same players, because they'll be like, I expect something incredibly spicy from you. I now know what to expect. But the deck is incredibly good, very, very fun. Just Labyrinths in general is definitely going to be a max contender from the upcoming format. I just wanted to change it up and play something a little bit different. And that's where the Dinomorphias came in and were incredibly fun. And like I said, did incredibly well, put in a lot of work because so many people were not expecting it. And if they were like, okay, I don't know what it does, but it sends from deck, I'm going to ash it. You go, okay, cool. Labyrinth plays, let's go, with no issue at all. Anyway, like I said, any questions at all, by all means, please put in the comments down below. I will be more than happy to answer them for you. But for now, as absolutely always, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.